China's draconian COVID lockdowns, protests explode, and Dementia Joe sits back and says nothing. Really, is anyone surprised by this? I'm Jasper Gonzo, and this is what's next. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Jasper Gonzo here. Another episode of What's Next, your daily dose. Hope you guys are doing good today. This story has just been blowing up. Literally blowing up the last 24 to 48 hours. Possibly longer than that. A supposed new outbreak of COVID running around in China. So what does China do? Does China call in Anthony Fauci and said, Mr. Science, sit down with us, talk with us, tell us what we need to do, because we gave you all this money to create this thing that killed, I don't know, 3 million plus people, worldwide, but who cares about that? We got a new strain running around here, so you need to help us. No. They don't do that. What they did do is beat its citizens, and I mean literally beat downs to the likes that we haven't seen since probably during the, during the civil rights movement during the 60s in this country, to the point where they welded doors shut. Welding doors shut of its own citizens in their own apartments to make sure they don't spread the virus. But now it's got out of control. How much more could it get out of control? Well, it's gotten out of control to the point where there are hundreds of thousands into the millions of protests in China to the likes as not been seen since Tiananmen Square in 1989. Remember the man? Remember the man who stood in front of the tanks? And of course that's been, memory hold because, no, it's China. Come on. That doesn't happen in China. The Uyghurs, anyone? Anyway. This is just getting, like I said, it's getting more and more out of control to the point where you would think that a president of a certain country would recognize and realize this and say, hey, I need to say something. Well, if this were Donald Trump, you betcha. This is Dementia Joe we're talking about. You're not getting shit. Let's talk about this. This comes out of Breitbart. CBS's O'Keefe. Biden hasn't publicly spoken on China's protest out of desire to stabilize relations. You never bite the hand that feeds you. More serious protests would stop talks. On Monday's edition of CBS News Primetime, CBS News anchor, White House political correspondent Ed O'Keefe said that President Joe Dementia hasn't spoken publicly about the protests in China against the lockdowns implemented in the country under the Chi-Com's zero COVID policy because Biden administration is taking a wait-and-see approach to the demonstrations out of the administration's desire to stabilize relationships with China. O'Keefe has also stated that American officials want to continue the discussions that they have been having with the Chinese officials over the past couple of weeks in the wake of President Dementia's meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20 summit, unless, of course, the protests grow more serious. From the videos that are being posted on social media around the world, gee, could it get any more serious? O'Keefe stated, President Dementia has been briefed on the protest, but has yet to speak publicly about them because he doesn't know where he is. That's the part of the cautious wait-and-see approach by the administration eager to stabilize relations with China, which have grown increasingly tense in the recent years. John, of course, the two presidents just met 2 weeks ago on the sidelines of the G20 summit, and they have had their various officials now holding meetings ever since. The hope is to continue those, unless, of course, the protests, again, grow more serious. Let's play a little bit.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe has more.
Tonight, the most widespread Chinese protests in years. At least 10 cities, including Shanghai, have now spread to Hong Kong. And the unrest is now affecting global markets. Shares of Apple fell nearly 3% after reports the company could see production losses.
No, really? With all those sweatshops?
Where workers have protested COVID restrictions and the lack of bonus payments.
Wow. We go from that to this. This comes also out of Breitbart. GOP Representative Gallagher, Musk can help Chinese protesters by booting propagandist Chi-Com's diplomats. Yes, Twitter has massive influence right now, more so than ever before because of Elon Musk. On Monday's broadcast of the Fox News Channel, America Reports, Representative Mike Gallagher out of Wisconsin called for an ending of federal corona emergency in the U.S. excuse me, to create a contrast with China's lockdowns that argue that Twitter could help the protesters against the lockdown policies by booting China's wolf warrior diplomats off the platform. And then finally, I think it's a reminder, when it comes to things like digital representation or repression, we can't allow Chinese control apps like TikTok in particular to continue to control young Americans. And so I hope the president will call on a banning for forced sale of TikTok. Finally, Elon Musk could actually help by kicking all of the Chinese wolf warrior diplomats, all the Chi-Coms, off the platform. Your average Chinese citizen does not have access to information on those platforms. But of course, this is all about spreading Chi-Com propaganda. Not surprised that Dementia Joe has sat back and said nothing. This is a man who sat down with a guy in a dress, social influencers, as he talked about his, transition into womanhood. And Dementia Joe just sat there with a big smile on his face going, I agree with you 100%. But when it comes to something like this, he won't say shit. And the reason why he won't say shit is because you're getting paid. Like I said earlier, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. The dog doesn't bite the hand of its master, because once the dog does, then the dog gets shot. And that's exactly what China has with us, with this administration particularly. It's got him by the balls. It literally has him by the short hairs. And there's nothing Biden can do about it. Just like the NBA has been eerily silent on this. The NFL, eerily silent on this. All sports teams have been eerily silent on this. Sports organizations and networks like ESPN Woke has been eerily silent on this. But yet, the beatdowns continue in China, locking people up in China. The protests grow more and more with ferocity, and rightly so. Like I also said in the beginning of this, there hasn't been protests like this since Tiananmen Square in '89. And you're hoping that this pushes Dementia Joe into actually coming out and saying, you know what? Yeah, this shit needs to stop. Well, it's not going to happen from him. It will not happen from him because he's scared to death. When you, as a country, China, own 40% of the U.S.'s national debt, 40%. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? You want to hope, you want to pray that organizations around the world step up and say, you know what? Yeah, we support the people of China. The citizens aren't the bad guys here when it comes to China. It's the Chi-Com government. The Chi-Com government has been a repressive, draconian government for centuries. We're not talking decades here. We're talking centuries. If you are, as a Chinese citizen, step up with a Bible in hand, one of three things are going to happen. A, you're going to get your Bible taken away from you. B, you're going to get sent to prison. And C, you're going to get beat downs and or death. Those are the three things that will end up happening to you. That's why there is a huge Christian Chinese movement underground that has been flourishing for decades. It's been well documented. And of course, those lovely Uyghurs. Yeah, the Muslim Uyghurs, they've been tortured over and over again, in China, but no one said shit except for a few conservative organizations and conservative alternative media have stepped up and have said something. Even Joe Rogan has mentioned, this stuff needs to stop with the Uyghurs and all that. That's all well and good. But now things have come to a head. Because if the U.S. says something, say, hey, you know what? Yeah, China, you need to squash this. You need to calm this thing down. Because guess what? Your people are going to keep on raging and raging and raging, and you want to hope that gets to that point. But if it gets to that point, I have no doubt in my mind that China will use its military might against its own citizens, because we've seen it before. With that being said, I'm Jazz Berganzo. This is What's Next. Want to see more shows like this? Please leave a comment below. Like it, share it, subscribe to it. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.